Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a video game from Japan. You probably already knew that. Let's pretend you don't believe me. Allow me to present the following evidence that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is, in fact, from Japan.
As my driver. As the driver of the Aegis.
The driver? Of the Aegis?
Yes, as the driver of the Aegis. This is a phenomenon I have until just this exact moment only privately referred to as Solidsnakeism. In Japanese, it's perfectly sufficient conversation sometimes to simply repeat the last couple words of a sentence. You can always spot a piece of media that has been translated from Japanese to English if it contains dialogue like this. Also, if it has anime boobies like these. If I had been translating this game, I would have taken this opportunity to have Rex say something weird. He would have replied to the driver of the Aegis with,
"What the crunk is an Aegis?"
Maybe this is why I don't localize games for a living. Anyway, I want to point out some differences I spotted or heard in the Japanese voiceover of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Disclaimer, I am not criticizing this game. I think the translators did a fantastic job of turning this game's complex script into enjoyable, coherent, meaningful, proofread subtitles. Speaking of those subtitles, the subtitles in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 reflect the English script perfectly, which makes it easy for me to point out these interesting differences. Let's start with religion scrubbing. Ever since Castlevania on the original Nintendo Entertainment System, Nintendo of America has had a thing for scrubbing references or imagery pertaining to religion, particularly Christianity, from games on its platforms. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 does this in a couple interesting places. Right at the beginning of the game, Rex is telling us about the world the characters live in. He tells us about the paradise atop the world tree. In English, this paradise is consistently referred to as Elysium, though in Japanese, it's always called
人はそこを楽園と呼んでいた。
Rakuen. Rakuen is a generic word for paradise. Its strictly etymological definition is happy garden. The Japanese name of Johnny Milton's Paradise Lost is Shitsurakuen, which literally means lost happy garden. Elysium, on the other hand, is a film starring Matt Damon. Elysium is also an ancient Greek concept of the afterlife. Wikipedia tells us admission was reserved for mortals related to the gods and other heroes. Later, it expanded to include those chosen by the gods. This is a nifty, if fancy way to translate Rakuen, though Rex's previous sentence, if you ask me, leaves no doubt that we're talking about the Christian biblical Eden here.
この世界ができる遥かな昔、人は世界樹の上に住む創世の神と共に暮らしていたという。
He describes humankind as having lived in this garden once, together with our divine father, the architect. In Japanese, he uses the word Sousei no Kami, the god of creation. Sousei doesn't just mean creation, it specifically means world creation. It is, in fact, the Japanese name of the biblical book of Genesis. Sousei no Kami means the god of Genesis. In Japanese, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is juxtaposing Christianity with the Norse myth of the world tree. I find this cute. Therefore, it's perfectly acceptable that the English version reminds me of Matt Damon and The Matrix, respectively, by using terms like Elysium and architect. Early in the game, we meet a hot girl named Pyra. The sinister friends we've made immediately refer to her as the Aegis. The Aegis is an object carried by Athena in Greek mythology. Scholars of the Iliad debate what it actually is. Some say it was a shield. Some say it was, you know what, let's just say we think it's a shield, okay. In Japanese, they call her
天の聖杯。
天の聖杯。
天の聖杯？
天の聖杯だ。
天の聖杯？
This 100% literally means the Holy Grail of Heaven. The strict etymology of Seihai is holy cup or holy vessel. Let's roll right in to talk about name polishing. Xenoblade Chronicles 2's English script changes the names of a lot of characters. Whoa! I actually like all of these changes. Rex's blade, she's the Holy Grail by the way, is named Pyra in English and Homura in Japanese.
私の名前はホムラ。
Homura is a fancy way of reading the kanji for fire, also pronounced Hono, so Pyra certainly fits as a name. One of the evil Torna drivers is named Malos in English. In Japanese, he's Metsu.
やめなよメッツ！メッツ！
Mitsu just so happens to be the final kanji in the word Zenmitsu, which means destruction, annihilation, massacre, or oblivion. So Malos is an appropriately classy, Latin-like name for an anime bad guy. Another of the evil Torna drivers is named Akhos in English and Yoshitsune in Japanese.
Yoshitsune ka.
Yoshitsune is the name of one of the most absolutely famous samurai warriors in Japanese history. Honestly, it's hammier than the pork section of a supermarket for a Japanese writer to name a glasses-wearing brainiac hot villain guy in an RPG Yoshitsune. So the nonsensical English name of Akhos is deliciously fitting. The driver Nia's blade, Dromarch, is Byakko in Japanese. Byakko literally means white tiger. In Chinese, this would be Baihu. Byakko is the name of the traditional Chinese symbol representing the cardinal direction west. According to my reference library, which is actually google.com, Dromarch is English for a character in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Any animavens in the audience will recognize that Dromarch's titling Nia My Lady is actually a perfectly accurate translation of the Japanese, in which he dutifully calls her Ojo-sama.
こたびはお嬢様が大変失礼なことを。
Later, we meet a driver named Vandham, whose blade is a big red bird named Rock. In Japanese, this bird is Suzaku, Juchui in Chinese. This literally means red bird, the traditional symbol of south. The other two symbols are Genbu, the black turtle of the north, and Seiryu, the blue dragon of the east. Something tells me I'm going to meet a black turtle blade and a blue dragon blade later. These symbols are significant in Taoism and date back to ancient times, and are thus very important to East Asian culture and video games. The Final Fantasy legend for Nintendo Game Boy, known as Saga in Japan, featured the four symbols as bosses of each of its four worlds. And then there's a whole game just called Blue Dragon. Wow! Shout me out in the comments and like my stuff if you dig Neolithic Chinese symbolism. Let's talk about the places where the English script has more personality than the Japanese one. I found a lot of these, so I'll give only a handful of examples from early in the game. I find slight differences like these super intriguing. If you want to play the game with the Japanese voiceover and obsessively repeat every line of dialogue, hey, that's how I learned Japanese, by the way. True story, really. Just know that the subtitles are taking approximately this much liberty. In English, Nia accuses Rex of being 12 years old. She says, "What are you, 12?" In Japanese, she just calls him a kid.
この程度の船で何感動してんのさ。本当に子供なんだから。
Malos calls Rex a brat in English. In Japanese, he calls him Kozo, which is a weirdly old-timey way of saying boy. Brat is a little bit too punchy. Maybe kid would have been enough. Later, our friends witness the majesty of the enormous Gormat Titan. English Rex says, "This is great, especially after slumming it on Gramps' back for so long." In Japanese, all he says is,
こいつは感動もんだよ。じっちゃんの狭い背中とは大違いだ。
to which Gramps replies,
沼一言余計じゃわい Hey man, don't make fun of me.
Much later, our little buddy Tora asks Rex and Pyra to loan him 60,000 gold. In English, Rex asks, "Do you want to kid me as well?" In Japanese, he just says,
6万! さすがにそれは。
The English injects a big dose of cheekiness into its quip. I like it. Then again, I like any quip with a K in it. And kidney is certainly the go-to internal organ for K quips. Pyra urges Rex to help Tora. In English, she tells Rex to calm down. In Japanese, she says no such thing.
ねえ、レックス。トラ君にも手伝ってもらいましょう。
Hey Rex, we should help Tora.
I enjoy the English here because, man, Pyra is just slightly too nice in Japanese, to the extent that it's kinda creepy. Far later in the game, Rex asks Pyra what the date is. In English, she says it's Amathatober 5th, 4058. In Japanese, she just says,
新暦4058年の9月5日です。
Kugatsu means September. Not Amathatober. I love it. I love Amathatober. Yeah, Xenoblade translators. Just go ahead and call it that. I heckin' love it. Worth pointing out, in Japanese, Rex says,
今日何年の何日だっけ?
The guy doesn't know what goddarn year it is. So yeah, I'd go ahead and tell him it's a Mathatober 5th, 4058 too. Much earlier in the game. In English, Rex calls Jin a psychopath for stabbing him in the back, though in Japanese, he just says,
それが大人のすることかよ!
He's straight up lecturing one of the guys who, earlier, had called him childish. His tone is grim, yet his diction is comical. I can't decide whether the English is more or less brutal and own than the Japanese. That brings us conveniently to our next section. Let's talk about places where the Japanese is punchier or weirder than the English. I have way too many examples of this. I'll start by illustrating the creatively different voice directions of the Japanese and English performances. Here is a little scene in which a bureaucrat named Dougal welcomes an elite warrior named Morag. In English, Dougal is a lordly, vociferous, proud, manly Scottish man, and Morag is a cool and exacting Scottish woman.
Had we but heard of your grace's visit, we could have prepared a suitable...
I don't stand on ceremony, Consul. I'd rather you just did your job.
In Japanese, Dougal is far fancier and flamboyantly dandy, and Morag's voice actor is far more masculine. Listen.
前もってご連絡くだされば歓迎の催しを開きましたものを。
あいにくその手のものは苦手でね。常に辞退させてもらっている。
Morag's Japanese voice actor is Saiga Mitsuki, an accomplished actress who specializes in voicing masculine women or feminine men. I love her. She spells her first name Mitsuki in hiragana. Mitsuki is in fact a unisex name in Japanese, so that's something neat to keep in mind while you play.
I don't remember asking for your opinion.
どこに行けば会えるのかな?
If my understanding of disease pathology is accurate, this next scene is somewhat viral on the internet right now. I'll show the English version first. The English dialogue is literally identical to the Japanese. However, note the differences in delivery.
Thank you, Rex. Now place your hand on my chest.
What? Are you sure?
Rex's response to the request that he put his hand on Pyra's chest is far more embarrassed in Japanese.
ありがとう、レックス。私の胸に手を。
いいの?
Let's look at their two responses again.
What? Are you sure? いいの?
In Japanese, Rex is embarrassed and ashamed because he is a horny young boy, and he realizes how ridiculous this situation is. In English, he's just like,
yeah, okay, bro.
He sounds like he could be agreeing to drive somebody to the mall. If I had to be a Judge Judy on this, I'd declare that the super horny Rex in the Japanese version is slightly more tasteful and less creepy than the casual English Rex. How does that work? Don't ask me. I'm not a doctor or a lawyer. When Tora asks Rex for money, Pyra offers to help. Rex refuses to let Pyra help and says, in English, no, it wouldn't be right. That's it. I'm paying for the parts myself. In Japanese, he says the same thing, except he prefaces it with, which means I'm a man. He shut down his girlfriend figure to offer to make money himself because he's a man. When Tora thanks Rex in English, he just says, Rex is too generous. In Japanese, he says, First of all, he calls Rex Aniki, which means big brother.
That's hilarious.
Second, he doesn't say generous. He says, Otoko no naka no otoko. My big brother is a man among men.
Whoa.
Let's back up a tiny bit to Pyra's offer to help. She says if it's just money he needs, I may be able to assist. To which Rex replies, assist? How exactly? Now Gramps floats down from the top of the screen and asks, nothing illegal, I hope. Rex immediately karate chops Gramps out of the sky. If we go by the subtitles, it looks like Rex's reaction is a little bit harsh. Gramps could have been talking about bank robbery. In Japanese, before he gets chopped down, Gramps says, Surely you don't mean your body. He's beginning a sentence with karada wo, your body. Karada wo uru means to sell one's body. Gramps is clearly dumbstruck and horrified of what he considers an imminent possibility that Pyra is going to prostitute herself. Rex takes offense to the notion and calls Gramps Kusojiji. Kusojiji means exactly what it sounds like it means. I think I gotta go home.